This video will tell you the 3 scariest stories. Subscribe. Imagine you are 16 years old. You have almost nothing in your pocket. You are standing on the side of the road under the scorching Florida sun with the person you love. Cars drive by, one after another, and suddenly one of them stops. The man behind the wheel smiles warmly and offers you a job. At that moment, it seems like you are simply lucky, like the universe finally decided to give you a break. But what awaited them outside the door of his house was impossible to imagine, even in your worst nightmare. July 14th, 1973, Fort Lauderdale, Florida. 16-year-old David Collins and his 15-year-old girlfriend, Emmy Wilson, were standing on the side of the road under the scorching sun, almost nothing in their pockets, the unknown ahead. They had been hitchhiking for several hours in search of work when a white pickup truck slowly pulled up next to them. A middle-aged man with a pleasant, almost friendly face was driving the car. He introduced himself as Brad. "Where are you going?" he asked. "Looking for work," the teenagers replied. Brad grinned even wider and said he was looking for someone to clean the house. The job was simple, and he would pay in cash, today. To David and Emmy, that sounded like a real win. They looked at each other, nodded, and got in the car without hesitation. The house he had dropped them off at looked perfectly normal. A quiet neighborhood, a well-kept yard, nothing suspicious. Flowers near the porch, an ordinary mailbox. But as soon as the door closed behind them, the man suddenly changed. He pulled out a gun. With barely a word, he forced them down to the basement. There was a room that looked like it was made for nightmares. Concrete walls, strange drawings glowing under ultraviolet light, manacles attached to the floor, heavy steel doors, so soundproof that any screams were simply lost inside. Swallowed by silence, the next few hours were a blur of terror. The man held them at gunpoint, filming everything on camera. David tried to look calm, tried to keep Emmy from panicking, but inside he was waiting for the moment, and then the moment came. He suddenly lunged at the man, trying to wrest the weapon away. A shot rang out, then a second, and a third. David fell to the floor. He never got up again. Emmy was left alone. What happened over the next 22 hours would haunt her for the rest of her life. Fear, helplessness, and the constant threat of death. Every minute stretched into an eternity. And then something strange happened, as suddenly as it had all begun. The man opened the door and told her to go. Before that, he threatened, if she told anyone, they would find her. His voice was calm, almost casual, which made it more terrifying. He didn't know Emma. The girl immediately went to the police station. She told everything, every detail, every minute of those terrible hours. Her hands were shaking, but her voice was steady. The police listened to her, and then decided to call her mother. And the mother said a phrase that practically destroyed the whole case. "She's lying. She always lies." After that, the police postponed the investigation. No one went to check the house. No one looked for the man. No one thought to ask whether it truly mattered if the girl had a difficult past. 5 days passed. The police were called to the house of a man named Robert Stone in Miami. A neighbor noticed that he was sitting outside in the rain and not moving. When the officers got closer, it became clear he was dead. In his hand was a mug of chocolate milk poisoned with cyanide. He chose this end himself. But when the investigators entered the house, they saw something much more terrible. There was a room in the basement, concrete walls, drawings that glow in ultraviolet light, handcuffs. Steel, soundproof doors. Everything was exactly as Emmy had described it. Every single detail. And in the shower stall they found something else, under a layer of concrete, almost a meter thick. The body of David Collins was walled up. Later, the investigators found Robert Stone's diary. In it, he had written for years about the struggle with himself, about the darkness he felt inside, about trying to direct his dangerous desires in another direction, about wanting to stop, about the shame that never left him. But he didn't stop, and in the end, he decided that the only way to stop himself was to destroy himself. Emmy survived, David didn't, and the police, who could have acted 5 days earlier, simply did not believe the girl whose own mother called her a liar. Sometimes, the scariest thing is not the monster in the basement, but the indifference of those who were supposed to protect. My only experience with picking up a passenger is not picking up a passenger. It was a Saturday night. Around 1 a.m. I was driving along the M06 highway in Zhytomyr Oblast, the road I usually took to Berdyhiv. It was a long stretch of nothing but forest on both sides with a few houses. I was coming home from the city, and as usual at this time of day, in our quiet town of Rushin, there was not a single other car on the road. I turned on the off-road headlights on my Jeep to get a better view of the unlit highway, which allowed me to spot someone far away on the side of the road. As I got closer, I saw him raise his hand with his thumb out. He was trying to stop the car. My heart started pounding. I didn't know whether to stop or not. I slowed down to get a better look at the guy first. He looked young, about 28, wearing a light gray hoodie with a hood up and blue jeans. There was no time to think, and on the spur of the moment, against all common sense, I stopped, rolled down the window, and asked, "Where do you want to ride, buddy?" "Just a little further," he replied, in a deep, low voice. "Sit down," I called out the window. He slowly opened the Jeep door and climbed in. The Jeep Wrangler has very tight doors, and the first time it didn't close. I politely said, "Oh, the door won't close, open it, and slam it harder. Those doors are hard to close." His reaction alarmed me. 3 seconds after I finished, he looked at me, then slowly turned his head to the right, and waited another 3 or 4 seconds before finally opening and slamming the door. The way he was moving made me regret letting him in. I stepped on the gas, and we were off. The speed limit on this road is 90 kilometers per hour, but I was going 120 to get the guy there faster. "So how far are you going?" Was an awkward pause and silence, after which he replied, "A few kilometers ahead." I wanted to turn on the radio to drown out this awkward and eerie silence, but something inside me told me not to. Suddenly, out of the corner of my eye, I noticed that the man had turned his head in my direction and was looking at me. I told myself that I had to drop him off as quickly as possible. For several kilometers, I felt his gaze like a brick, and all the time I tried not to look back. Finally, he turned away and said, "You know, I've been thinking for a long time, is it worth continuing to live?" I looked at him in confusion. He put his hand in his pocket and added, "I've been carrying this knife with me for several weeks. I think about when the right moment comes." He pulled out a big black knife, and in that moment everything inside me snapped. I told him to put the knife away immediately. He replied in a calm, indifferent voice, "Stop at that sign." I did as he said, stopping at the speed limit sign. What happened next still haunts me. To this day, he started cutting his forearm, along with 3 other scars from what must have been previous assault, and let out a horrible groan. I forced out, "You need to get out of my car, buddy." He looked at me and said, "Get out of my car. I want to show you something." I refused, and he brought the knife closer to me as an obvious threat. "Just get out for a second. I want to show you something behind that sign." I knew my life was on the line, and I had to be smart. I said, "Okay, man, let's go." I opened the Jeep door, deliberately leaving it open, raised my hands up, and slowly backed away from the car. He got out too, and headed toward me. At the very moment he was right behind the car, I jumped back, put it in gear, and floored the gas without looking back. I got home to Ruzhin in 10 minutes still, breathing heavily and wanting to throw up. It was the scariest thing that has ever happened to me. I ask everyone and everyone, if you suddenly see a fellow traveler on an empty road late at night, don't do anything but step on the gas and drive past. I don't remember much of that party, except for the moment when our friend Emma, who was supposed to be the sober driver, suddenly said she had to leave because of a family matter. She looked worried and was already putting on her jacket while explaining that something had happened at home. None of us really questioned it. Things like that happen, and the party was already loud and chaotic. My friend Derek just shrugged. Don't worry, we'll get there eventually. It seemed like a good idea at the time. A few more hours passed. The drinks got bigger. The music got louder. People moved from room to room, laughing, talking over each other, opening new bottles. At some point, I realized I was barely able to stand. The room felt warm and slightly blurry. I looked at my phone. 2:07 a.m. I decided it was time to leave. I looked around the house, checking the kitchen, the hallway, even the backyard, but Derek was nowhere to be found. At first, I thought he was outside, then maybe upstairs. It took me a few minutes to realize the obvious. He had left. I asked the host of the party for his phone number and called his house twice. No one answered. I didn't want to wake his parents, so I just went out onto the road. The night was strangely quiet. The music from the house quickly faded behind me. Only the wind moved the branches of the trees. My house was about a 40-minute walk away. After about 15 minutes, I saw two distant headlights behind me. I raised my hand. The car slowly approached. It was an old, dark SUV. The driver rolled down the window. "Where are you going?" I explained that I lived nearby and had missed my ride home. He thought for a moment. Then he nodded. "Sit down." I got into the car. The inside smelled of old cloth and gasoline. The seats were worn and the air inside felt heavy. I was so drunk and tired that I almost immediately closed my eyes. The next thing I knew, I woke up. The car was still moving, but the road didn't look right too. Narrow, too dark. I looked out the window. There were fields all around. No houses, no lights. I'd never seen this road before. "We passed my turn," I said. The driver was silent. I repeated, "You passed my turn." He replied calmly, "You looked like you needed some fresh air." At that moment, everything inside me went cold. "Please let me out." A few seconds of silence, then, "No." My heart started pounding. The alcohol fog disappeared almost instantly, replaced by fear. Then suddenly I felt nausea. I started coughing. The driver looked at me, and that's when I realized this was my chance. I leaned forward as if I were about to vomit. He instinctively moved away. I pretended I couldn't hold it back, and the next second, I threw up right at him. The man screamed. The car swerved to the side of the road. Before he could react, I jumped out of the car. Cold air hit my face. I ran straight into the darkness. Across a field, then into a narrow strip of trees. Branches scratched my arms as I pushed through them. I hid behind thick bushes and stopped, breathing. A few seconds later I heard the car door. Then, footsteps. He had a flashlight. The light moved slowly between the trees. Once it passed only a few meters away, then again. Twice the beam moved almost over my head. I was sure he would find me, but he kept going, deeper, into the darkness. I waited, then I quietly made my way back to the road. His car was still there. I tried to open the door. It was locked then. Then I saw more headlights in the distance. I ran straight onto the road. The driver braked hard. I started screaming for help. I said that the man in the dark SUV was trying to take me somewhere. The people in the car looked at each other, and they said, "Get in." They drove me home. When I told my parents everything, my dad asked, "Did you remember the license plate number?" And then I realized I had made the biggest mistake. I didn't remember anything, just an old, dark SUV and a driver who wouldn't stop the car. I never take passengers again, and I never get in their car again.